Hey Wargamers, it's Chris with Wargame Creations, and today I'm bringing you the second video in my series on how to achieve high quality 3D prints, specifically for wargaming terrain, but this can be applied for any 3D printing application that you may need it for. First couple of settings we're going to be talking about is wall thickness. Basically, your walls are going to be this red line and green line here. Two walls, one outer and one inner, for a total of 0.8 millimeters of thickness. That thickness comes from the line width that we had set in the previous video, coming from this quality section here. Outer wall wipe distance. Basically what this is going to do is over from here, for example, when it is finished printing, this white square here is going to be like a seam line. So this is where the filament essentially starts and stops when it's putting down its outer line. So what it will do is when it is finished, it will actually come into this other wall to wipe away any excess plastic that may be jammed in the nozzle. Outer wall inset, I just keep this at 0. Optimize wall printing order, I keep that on. I let the slicer basically figure out what the easiest path is, just as a consistency thing. You can play around with that, turning that on and off on certain models to achieve certain prints if that's what you're looking to go for, but I just like keeping things simple, so I always keep that on. Outer before inner walls, basically what that will do is exactly what it says. If you check mark that box, the outer walls will go down before the inner walls, which that doesn't seem like a very big significance, but when you lay the inner wall down first and it has time to solidify, and then this outer wall can come around and it can be a lot more accurate and a lot cleaner. Alternate extra wall, basically what that would do is, as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, it would just make one extra wall every other layer. So again, if you want to kind of find a happy ground in between 3 and 2, that's basically 2.5 walls, but it will alternate every other layer. Compensate wall overlaps, I keep that turned on. Basically, say for example, right here in this cross section, when it's coming across and doing like this X pattern, when it has already laid down one line and it's coming back over a second time, it'll actually reduce the flow so that the printer head doesn't jump up and start creating some crazy things. Compensate outer wall overlaps and inner wall overlaps. Basically these are just subsections of wall overlaps, so I keep both of those on. Minimum wall flow, I just keep this at its standard 0%, which I think turns it off. Fill gaps between walls everywhere. Basically that is going to do exactly what it says, where no walls fit. It'll just filter that out and it'll figure out how to run something else, kind of like in here. This would be technically like a thin wall, I guess, or like a skin, but in certain areas, like this model probably doesn't have one specifically that would be good to show, but usually you run into that when you run into like thinner things like that, like these little red dots and things like that. You start getting into a much smaller detail. Filter out tiny gaps, yes, and then this one is very important, print thin walls. And what that's going to do is print pieces of the model which are horizontally thinner than the nozzle size. So for example, if we're coming through and this is 0.4, and this is 0.4, and whatever this green is supposed to be in the middle is not also 0.4, say it's 0.3 or 0.2, it'll actually adjust the flow down so that it can put out a much smaller line, even out of that larger nozzle. Horizontal expansion, I keep all this, I just leave it at 0. Basically this will offset different shapes inside of the model so that it achieves like a different effect. When you slice the model, sometimes when you're going, like as you can see here, there's this thin gray part that represents the actual 3D model itself, and this red being what would essentially be stacked filament on top of itself. So you have these small gaps in here. If you were printing, say, like a much larger layer height and something that didn't have as much detail, maybe that's something you'd mess with, but for what I use it for, I don't ever really mess with that. So then you have Z seam alignment. I have that set to sharpest corner, and Z or seam corner preference is set to smart hiding. So each layer of this has a start and an end point. If you change these settings, it might run a straight line down your model, and then you'll have this, when the print is finished, you'll have this one consistent line all the way up your print, which might not be a big deal, you know, you can sand it off or whatever, but with sharpest corner and smart hiding on, basically how I was saying earlier with these like little white squares here, these are your Z seams, so it will just randomize these, which really does help on the quality. See, it'll even hide them inside of these little alcoves and stuff like that. So alright, that'll do it for this section. Please stay tuned for the next section, where we'll be talking about the top and bottom layers of the print. That is a very important section that I found recently that is critical to helping save a lot of time and material, but still help achieve high quality prints, especially with like roofs and overhangs. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and turn the notification bell on for more videos like this in the future. If there's anything else you'd like to see, just please leave it in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to it and answer all of your questions. Thank you guys so much.